worry if you don't understand the English yet. You can just tap this settings button and change the language easily.
First, click the CC button here. Then, open the settings and select subtitles. Choose Auto Translate and pick your language, like Spanish.
That was all super simple and quick. Enjoy watching!
So picture this, it's nearly 4,000 years ago, and a king decides to do something kinda radical. He's gonna carve all the rules for his entire civilization into a giant chunk of rock for everyone to see. Now, this wasn't just some random list of do's and don'ts. No, this was a revolutionary idea that would literally change how we think about justice forever. All right, let's dive into the story of Hammurabi and his incredible code of laws. We've all heard this phrase, right? And yeah, it sounds unbelievably harsh. But believe it or not, the principle here wasn't just about simple revenge. It was actually one of the very first attempts in human history to make a punishment fit the crime, to stop those endless cycles of retaliation and turn personal vengeance into an actual structured system of justice. Oh, not even close. You know, behind that one famous line is this incredibly complex story about a brilliant ruler, a rising empire, and a society that was deeply, deeply divided by social class. So to really get the code, we first have to understand the world that made it. So let's start with the stone itself. This amazing artifact wasn't just a list of rules. It was a physical symbol that was about to change the entire concept of law forever. Think about this. This wasn't some secret scroll that was locked away in a palace somewhere. We're talking about a massive stone pillar, almost 2 meters tall. That's taller than most people. And it was probably stuck right in the middle of a bustling city square. This was a radical act of transparency. By putting the laws out in the open like that, Hammurabi was basically shouting that justice wasn't some secret that only the powerful could know. It belonged to everybody. It was visible, and it was permanent. Now, to really appreciate why making the law public was so revolutionary, we need to hit rewind. We need to meet the man himself and see the kind of chaotic world he was born into. Hammurabi was not born into a superpower. Not at all. When he took the throne, Babylon was just another small city-state in Mesopotamia, always scrapping for land and resources. It was totally overshadowed by bigger, more powerful kingdoms like Larsa and Eshnunna. For a young king, the main goal was just survival, not building an empire. I mean, this slide right here really shows you the scale of what he pulled off. He inherited this vulnerable little city-state, and over decades of smart politics and sharp military moves, he turned it into the capital of a massive empire. So how on earth did he do it? Well, he played the long game. For years, he just focused on building up Babylon's defenses and its economy. Then he started making alliances, cleverly turning his rivals against each other. And when the time was just right, he struck. In 1763 BC, he took down his old enemy, Larsa. A couple years later, he conquered his former ally, Mari, and then Eshnunna. In just a few decades, he'd managed to unite almost all of Mesopotamia under his rule. But, you know, conquering is one thing. Actually, governing is a whole other beast. Hammurabi was now the ruler of this huge territory, filled with all these different people, with their own customs, their own gods. He knew that you could conquer land with an army, but you could only hold it together with law. He needed a way to create some kind of unified identity and stop his new empire from just falling apart. And this brings us to his ultimate solution, a single written legal code for his entire empire. So what did this system actually look like day to day? How did it work? At the very heart of the code was this core idea, lex talionis, or the law of retaliation. It basically established that the punishment should fit the crime. This was a huge step forward, designed to replace wild personal vengeance with state-controlled proportional justice. But, as we're about to see, that justice was anything but equal. And here's where the inequality was literally written into the system. Babylonian society was split into 3 classes. You had the elite awulum, the commoner mushkenim, and then the enslaved wardom at the bottom. The law was completely different for each group. For example, if an elite guy injured a commoner, he might just have to pay a fine. But if a commoner injured an elite, he could face a really brutal physical punishment. And this wasn't a mistake, it was the whole point. To keep his new empire stable, Hammurabi had to lock in the social structure. The code was a political tool just as much as a legal one. It made the social hierarchy crystal clear, telling everyone exactly where they stood. And this code was incredibly comprehensive. I mean, it was basically a detailed instruction manual for an entire society. It micromanaged almost every part of life, it set interest rates on loans, it had rules for divorce, it dictated wages for workers, and even had penalties for medical malpractice. If you could do it in Babylon, you can bet there was a law for it on that stone. This law right here is a perfect example of one of the code's most modern-sounding ideas, professional accountability. Basically, if your work led to a disaster, you were personally on the hook for the consequences. It held skilled workers to the absolute highest standard, making it terrifyingly clear that shoddy work could literally cost you your life. So, all this stuff happened almost 4,000 years ago. Why are we still talking about a set of rules from some ancient empire? Why does it still matter so much? Well, the full code had 282 laws, all carved in the Akkadian language. And that part is so important. It wasn't written in some complicated secret script that only priests could read. It was written in the common language of the people. That meant any literate person in the empire, a merchant, a scribe, a landowner, could read and understand their own rights and responsibilities. And this is the real takeaway. The code's biggest innovation wasn't any single law. It was the very idea of a legal system itself. Before Hammurabi, justice was often totally random. It just depended on the mood of a local ruler. Hammurabi threw that out and replaced it with a system that was predictable, that was visible to everybody, and that was quite literally set in stone. And you can draw a direct line from that stone pillar all the way to our world today. Hammurabi's idea that a society should be governed by written public laws was copied and tweaked by civilizations for thousands of years. It's the granddaddy of the Roman 12 tables, European legal codes, and modern constitutions. That core belief that the law applies to everyone, that's a legacy of Hammurabi. And what's so amazing is that the original stele actually survived. After being stolen by invaders centuries after Hammurabi's death, it was eventually lost to time, only to be dug up by archaeologists in 1901. And today you can actually go and see this nearly 4,000-year-old pillar of justice for yourself. It's on display at the Louvre Museum. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought. Hammurabi chose 282 laws to define his entire civilization, covering everything from business to family. So, if you had to pick just one principle to govern society, one rule from your own life that you would carve in stone for everyone to see, what would it be?
If you like the story of Hammurabi and want to discover other personalities, press the like button, subscribe, and share. See you in the next episode.